Hello everybody and welcome or welcome back to the second shelf and to another tops and flops video. Yes, we are back with the tops and flops. Not sure that I will do one every month. To be honest, I'm just not reading enough flops. That's probably, I don't know, good for me, but bad for this type of video because I have to have some books at least that I did not like or that were boring, But I want to bring it back at least once every 2 months or maybe 3 months. And yeah, we'll see. But for now, this is the tops and flops. Let's say, I think I said spring and summer in the description. So it's during the break that I took until August. And we keep the same format, first the tops and then the flops. And within the tops, the first one is the book that I thought about the most. And that was without any doubt, and the very glaring cover, Praiseworthy by Alexis Wright. It won multiple book prizes, was ignored for the Booker Prize for I don't know why. Maybe it wasn't submitted. We will never know. But yeah, it was published last year, and it is a chunker of. It has 650 pages, and it's quite densely written. So I will say. I can highly recommend this book, but you need to take your time with it. Because it's huge, because it's dense, it's not only the font and the page that is dense, but also the writing. Alexis Wright is an indigenous, or I think you say Aboriginal Australian writer. And this is about the Aboriginal experience in the present day. The plight and the horrible experiences they have in Australia, living in Australia. She tackles that by talking about people in an invented village, Praiseworthy, and it centers around a family, more or less, that you have a husband, wife, and 2 sons. Cosman Steele is the husband's name. Dance is the wife's name, and then you have 2 sons, Aboriginal Sovereignty and Tommyhawk. Tommyhawk is only 7. Aboriginal Sovereignty is in his late teens. But you also have characters like the mayor, side characters who play an important role. This book is hard to describe other than saying it. The author tackles the Aboriginal experience, and she is quite in your face with it. But why I thought about the book so much is that, for sure, because I learned a lot. I also had to Google things like, legal issues in Australia concerning Aboriginal and land and things like that. But I don't know why this book works so well. If you describe this book to me, it has everything that I think that can never work. Take, for instance, just as an example, I already told you the oldest son of the family is called Aboriginal Sovereignty, and he stands for that term, Aboriginal Sovereignty. And he goes into the ocean and, disappears. This is so cliche, if I tell you that you think, yeah, come on, that, and it works. I think it's the power of this writer, the way she plays with this form and with the cliches and the stereotypes, that it really works. But I spent quite some time thinking about the question, why does it work so well? But anyway, I really hope you will pick up this book. Again, you need to be aware that you will have to spend some time with it, that you will, at least if you are, your experience is similar than as mine, that you might not get everything right from the start, because it's not, there is some plot, like Cosman Steele, he wants to save his people by setting up a company for transportation with donkeys, because he thinks the climate catastrophe everything will break down, and then donkeys will still be there, and he will be able, to transport goods and letters and what have you with his donkey company. So there is plot, but not in the, in the normal quote unquote way. So it also helped that I buddy read this book with Adam from Memento Mori, because that kept me going, and I was able to talk to somebody about it. Come to think of it, excuse me, thinking makes me cough. Come to think of it, maybe I should make a video about how to tackle really, really big books, and big, not a huge mystery like Elizabeth George's Linley's book sometimes have 800 pages, but that's fairly easy to read. But more difficult books, big classics or a book like that, it's a good idea. I think I will do that. But anyway, so this was definitely the book that I thought about the most, spring, summer. Then the next up is in the category tops. We keep to the old format. The book that surprised me the most, and that was Monique Roffey's book, The Mermaid of Black Conch. This is a Caribbean novel set on an island, an invented island, but in the Caribbean. And the author is, the island is called Black Conch, and there is no such island, and the author is from Trinidad. This book was first published 2020. Yeah. 2020. And as you can see from the title and the cover, it's about a mermaid. I'm not into mermaid. The whole mermaid trope most of the time irks me. Women who become real women after they fall in love, and then they are able to have sex, because obviously you can't have regular sex if you can't, if you don't have legs to, you know what I mean. I'm not going to go into dangerous territory so that YouTube will ban me, but you know what I mean. So that trope just not, it doesn't work for me. I picked this book up nevertheless, because Karen from Run Right Reads has her book club about Caribbean literature, and she wants us to, pick up more Caribbean authors, Caribbean books, and this was on her list. So I thought, I'll give it a try. And I was just blown away by this book. It gives the whole mermaid trope such an interesting twist. It starts tropey enough with a mermaid who is captured and falls in love, or rather a man who saves her and falls in love with her, and then she slowly turns human, or she loses her, her tail, and she starts to learn language. But it's such a rich setting with the side characters, the kind of owner of the island, a woman who comes from has a colonial background, with her son who is mute, and it's such a rich story and told, in quite a short book. And I thought it was fascinating. It made me think about the whole trope and mermaid trope and why I don't like it. But you don't have to be interested in that in order to pick this up. I think if you just want to hear a good story that is a little bit different, this book is for you. So yeah, that was the book that definitely surprised me the most. And the last in the category tops, as always, is the best nonfiction book. And that was really, really difficult because I read quite a bit of nonfiction. I think about more than a third of my reading is, almost half, between a third and half of my reading is nonfiction. And I read some really, really good books. But in the end, I just picked one, and it was Naomi Klein's Doppelganger. This one, the Women's Prize for Nonfiction, the inaugural Women's Prize for Nonfiction, was given the first time this year. Yes, if you haven't heard, Women's Prize has now 2 categories, fiction and nonfiction. And this book won the nonfiction. Naomi Klein, I think, is well known for her environmental books, her books about corporate, No Logo. She's a Canadian activist and writer, and I like her work. It's not that this was my first book by her, and I follow her on Twitter, and I really like what she's doing. So I went into this book not with very high, maybe too high expectations, but I expected something that I would appreciate. And I definitely did. But this book is, again, like praiseworthy, it's hard to describe. So it starts, the core of the idea that the author had for this book is the fact that Naomi Klein, is often mixed up with another Naomi, Woolf, who was a feminist and turned conspiracy, anti-vax, Steve Bannon worshipping, kind of very weird. She made a very weird right turn. I mean, I read Naomi Wolf's books when I was in my early 20s, late 20s, about feminism, beauty myth, stuff like that. I really liked it. But anyway, Naomi Klein, is often confused with her. Happened to me as well. Not Naomi Campbell so much, but Naomi Wolf. And that was the sort of the entrance way for her into writing this book. So there is a part of this about Naomi Wolf and the trajectory that she took, from left-wing feminist author into Steve Bannon territory. But this is only, like I said, the entrance. She then, like the subtitle says, a trip into the mirror world. She explores this other world that we, just look at and think, what is that? Just as they look at us and think, what is that? So the world where conspiracy theories thrive, where Donald Trump won the election, the last presidential election, 2016, and they were taken from him. So that type of world. And she explores the theme of what is fake, what is truth, where does that come from, this split between, two worlds, and each one looks at the other as a sort of distorted mirror world. It is not an easy book to grasp, but just go with the flow. Trust the author, go with it, and I'm sure that if you are interested at all in this type of topic, that you will get a lot out of it. So, best nonfiction. Then we move on to the flops. And I have two, as usual. One that really irked the living Jesus out of me. And I don't talk about German literature a lot. I don't read German literature a lot. I think I read 3 or 4 German authors this year so far, and it's September. But this I wanted to mention because it stands for me for a certain irk factor that I was wondering whether you had that as well. So, and the book is Doris Knecht, Die Nachricht, so the message. It's about cyberbullying, it's about cyber stalking, and I thought that was an interesting topic. This was the pick of my in real life book club, which I then couldn't attend, but doesn't matter because I hated the book. But I think everybody else hated it as well. And it follows Ruth, a filmmaker, and she's a widow. Her husband unexpectedly died in a freak skiing accident. She has children, almost grown, one, and the other is a grown up. And just a new relationship starting with Simon, and she starts to get these really ugly messages. That's the premise, and I think that's really interesting because cyberbullying or cyber stalking is an issue, especially for women. Just look at what happens on Twitter if you are a woman and you say something that is considered as controversial. So the premise is really good, but then it's such a stereotypical book that, but the irk factor I wanted to talk about is if a book has something legal in it, whether it's a court hearing or whether it's a legal issue, like here, stalking is a criminal offense in Europe. This book is set in Austria. The author, I should have said, is Austrian. And it's just bullshit. It just doesn't, that really irks me so much. And I never understand why people wouldn't at least fact check something with a professional, an expert. Like if you write a book about a medical procedure, I think you should make sure that this is actually how it happens. And the same when there is a legal issue. So yeah, this book is one of the few books that received 1 star, and it hasn't been translated. So if you don't read German, you will probably never encounter it. And if you read German, just ignore it. The second book was more of a meh book. Disappointing, not bad, but disappointing. And that was Tenderloin by JoSmith, translated from the French by Lara Vergniaud. And this is a 2012 book, and I read this with JoSmith. And it's about Pim, the butcher, and he loves his work. And it's about animal rights, more or less, but not explicitly. It's about butchering and what it means, and can you love a job where you kill animals. And it was just, the premise was so interesting, the start was so interesting, and then it just fizzled. Nothing ever really happened or came of it. And that was such a huge disappointment. I mean, it was well written, it was not an immense waste of time or anything, but it was just really disappointing. I will still read another book by this author, if anything else. This is the second book that has been translated into English. So if there is another book translated, I will pick it up. Anyway, these were my tops and flops for spring and summer. Little long. I am trying to keep the next one, Tops and Flops, a little shorter. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching. As always, looking forward to your comments, and I'll see you all soon in the next one, next Sunday.